What if I asked you to stop whatever it is you're doing right now and hop on a scale? What would that number say? And more importantly, how would that number make you feel? If the thought alone makes your palms sweaty and your pulse pick up, you are not alone. There's no doubt that in our culture, that number says a lot about us. Not just about our physical health, but also our ability to attract mates, how much people like us, and even our quality as people. Not long ago, the average person had no idea what they weighed. So how'd we go from this blissfully ignorant life to a world where weight rules? In this episode, we cover the rise of the bathroom scale, how we became obsessed with our weight, and how the social implications of weight can have very real and very serious effects. That's what you're in for today on Impolite Society.
You're listening to Impolite Society with Laura and Rachel.
Welcome back to Impolite Society. And is that the drums? Or maybe it's the sound of the entire fucking world trying to run off the 5 pounds we've gained over the holidays.
This is actually a sound that we sampled from the cardio section in every Gold's Gym in America.
Gold's Gym doesn't exist anymore.
It does not?
No, they're gone.
That's how long it's been since I've been to a gym.
But no, it is just us. It is Impolite Society. We are the show that tackles those itching, taboo questions that you just can't ask at your boss's Christmas dinner party. And I'm Laura.
And I'm Rachel.
And today on Impolite Society, we've got a big topic for you today. But before we get into that, I just wanted to shout out the great people who went on and left us a review on Apple Podcast. We really appreciate it. Lone Wolf 964, thank you so much for giving us a shout out on there.
And if you want a shout out from us on here, be sure to go out there and leave us a 5-star rating and a nice review, and we will shout out you.
And Spotify has actually just added podcast reviews.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, so you can go on and give us a 1 to 5-star review on Spotify. We recommend a 5-star review, but we're not super picky. We just want to know what you think.
If you wanted to throw some 4s in there, that makes us look a little bit more trustworthy to people who are new. It's how new listeners know that you're not just our family and friends listening and then giving us 5s, but who knows, you might be our family and friends. And if that's the case, you're still here? You're still listening to this? I would have thought we scared you away long ago.
So today on Impolite Society, we are tackling the big one. The one that is on everyone's minds now that we've gorged ourselves on Christmas cookies, ham, all those stupid little edible gifts you get from people that don't know what else to get you. And I mean, you can't throw it away. It was a gift. I've got to eat that chocolate-covered caramel corn or whatever the fuck it is.
That would be offensive.
Exactly.
That would actually be like slapping Santa Claus in the face if you did not eat your Christmas gift.
Precisely. So we got to gobble all that shit down. So it's on everyone's minds. We're in a new year. Holidays are behind us. We're all making these bullshit New Year's resolutions.
We are all crawling out of our cone of shame of just stuffing our face for the last 2 weeks and laying around and wearing comfy pants and drinking copiously, and we're feeling a little heavy.
We are feeling a little bit heavy. We're staring down our bathroom scales, just terrified to ask ourselves that big question: how much do you weigh? And this is like the top taboo. Try asking this to any woman and get ready to be dagger-eyed like you have never been dagger-eyed before.
Well, it's so much a taboo that it's like the zinger, right? When a man feels offended by a woman's maybe height requirements or something, that's one of the things they throw back at you. And it's not just women, because men can go on either end of the spectrum. They can either weigh too much and then they're embarrassed about that, or if a man doesn't weigh enough, it can be sensitive.
Oh man, insecurity tough topic. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of this. I feel like I get offended when they ask it on any official questionnaire, like when the DMV asks me.
Oh, yeah. Like, why do you need to know?
Yeah. Or the medical forms. It's just like, none of your fucking business how much I weigh.
Speaking of improper places to have seen a weight question,
On a job application.
I've seen it on a job application.
Are you serious?
I have, yes. For an ice cream store, ice cream stand in our native homeland of North County.
Why do they give a fuck? I mean, is it small working quarters they need?
No, they just, because the guy's a pervert. It's kind of the legend. You have to put your height and your weight, and then they're like, what activities are you in at school? Like cheerleading or
Volleyball.
anything else with short little pants. Like, how short are your pants?
Ugh, that gives me the heaves. But today, we are going to stare down this big, mean monster taboo. We're going to be brave.
Speak for yourself. I'm going to wear my oversized sweatshirt, and I am just going to hide. I'm going to hide myself from the world and reality. I'm a special snowflake. Reality can't interfere with my safe space.
So I'm going to stare it down. How about that? I'm going to stare it down. But we are going to dig into its history, its implications, and most importantly, I'm going to take a visit to the vulnerability corner. We haven't been here in a while.
Oh, I'm going to be vulnerable.
Okay, but I'm gonna do it a little bit more. I'm just gonna outdo you a little bit because I'm gonna weigh myself right here, right now, to kick off this rude question, this rude conversation. I'm gonna get on my bathroom scale, which I have brought down to my podcast room. It is right here beside me. I'm gonna get on it, and I'm gonna tell you all what exactly it says.
You picked the worst day for this activity. It is literally 2 days after Christmas.
Oh, totally. I've been off work. I had a nice fat breakfast at First Watch today. And then I had a dinner that consisted of a lot of sodium. And I'm also fully clothed.
That's brave. I only weigh myself in the nude.
Most of the time I do. But you know what? Like I said, vulnerability corner.
I mean, I can tell you how much I weigh. I just can't see those numbers on a scale right now. I just can't do it.
I'm mentally preparing myself because not only am I fully clothed, but at the end of the day, I've got a microphone in my hand.
That's got to be at least 20 pounds. Yeah, Laura's not joking. She's standing up, holding the microphone, about to get on her scale.
I'm looking down at it. It's okay. All right. I'm ready. I'm doing it.
Oh, gosh. So Laura's getting on it. I'm sweating. I'm sweating for you.
Oh, shit. It's thinking, I don't like that number at all. All right, guys, here it is. 185.5. On a regular morning, I weigh 181. Of course, when it's not a holiday. But, I mean, that number doesn't surprise me. 185.5. I'm 5'5". So to give you a sense, I'm not like some 6-foot monster man. So, I mean, we can all get a sense of what that's like. I'm a chubby lady.
Should I do it, Laura? Should I do it?
I mean, you don't have to do it, Rachel. I don't want to force you beyond your comfort zone.
I can tell you what it is, but if I get on the scale and see it, it's going to wreck my mental health. It's been an ongoing issue where I used to be probably a little too weight focused, where it was a very big part of my day-to-day life was just managing it. And I've finally gotten to a part where I'm a little bit more relaxed and a little bit hands off. And I know it's catching up to me. And I'm afraid to go down that rabbit hole again.
Then I think that you shouldn't. Because as we're going to dig in here, there's a reason for the kind of neurotic feeling that we all get around the scale. And it is precarious. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with you because you feel that way, because it's really, really common. So I say skip it. We are going to talk about all those reasons that contribute to exactly what Rachel is feeling right now. And if you feel that same way, we've got answers for you. We've got history for you about why you feel this way. But now we know how much I weigh, 185.5. But that really isn't the answer to the question, is it? Because the number doesn't mean so much. What I really want to know is, why does it matter? Why do those numbers fill people with dread? Why do we care so damn much? Why does that number make me a little sick to the stomach when I see it on the scale? Numbers are numbers, but what is the meaning that we've assigned that loaded question of how much do you weigh? And after this break, we are going to get into the history of the scale, what it means to have or not have an ideal body, and why being seen as fat is that social kiss of death. All that after this quick break.
Hello, this is Lafayette. And I'm Carlos from Nerds Talking the Podcast.
That's right.
Where we talk about everything from UFOs, comic books,
I like that.
movies, streaming services, conspiracy theories, ghosts, video games, and more.
Kick ass.
All on Nerds Talking the Podcast.
You can find us every Friday with new episodes on all digital platforms where you find your favorite podcast, Nerds Talking, the podcast.
Now back to the show.
Now that I've officially gotten myself off the hook of weighing myself on live radio.
Live recorded radio that we edit.
Live recorded, heavily edited radio. I can continually chug my beer, which I feel like creates more weight than the actual weight of the beer that you drank. You know, you could drink.
I think it probably does.
Yeah, it just makes you heavier. Beer makes you heavy.
Well, people have been weighing things, beer or no beer, for a really long time. But actually weighing yourself and assigning meaning, or more to the point, value to that number is really freaking new in the history of the world.
Which makes a lot of sense, because how would people have weighed themselves in the past?
They've got like those little scales, and I imagine there were some big industrial scales, and probably on a lark, people would be like, I'm going to jump on there and weigh myself.
Why? We need to know, how else do you know if this woman is a witch or not, other than to weigh her against a duck?
So doctors and hospitals, they started using scales in the office around the 1870s. But they weren't actually used a part of that normal medical evaluation process until later.
I feel like also before there wasn't such things as your annual checkup. So by the time you came into the hospital, you were already pretty much horizontal.
Fair.
Nobody's going to prop you up on the scale to be like, oh, this person's dying of consumption. Let's see how much they weigh. It wasn't really a precise science on how many leeches per body mass. Like, yeah, this person looks like a 5-leech situation. They weren't like, oh no, they don't have enough blood for that. It's just more leeches the better, honestly.
You just eyeball it at that point.
God, I would have been a great doctor in the year 1500.
4 leeches, 5 leeches, no leeches.
You just put enough leeches on them to get them nice and subdued, and you're like, medicine.
Yeah. There wasn't that standard procedure of your annual physical. You get in the door, you get on the scale, you do the negotiation with the nurse. You're like, shoes on, shoes off, coat on, coat off.
Yeah, that's fucking ruthless, where they're like, yeah, no, everything you got on, stand on it.
Yes.
Why are you a masochist?
Say a prayer, think thin thoughts, get on that scale. Not a part of the normal procedure, because they were usually horizontal by that part. But 150 years ago, nobody really knew how much they weighed.
They couldn't even count that high.
Nobody got past a 5th grade education. They're like, what comes after 20? I don't know.
We got 10-Z's, 2Z's. It's because it's like 2 10s in a row. But I sure can grow some wheat.
But this ignorance was only up until the penny scale was brought to America from Germany around 1885. Do you know what a penny scale is, Rachel?
If you'd say penny scale, I would assume it was something to weigh pennies.
No, that is not correct.
What?
And I suspected you might not know what this is because you are young. I used to see these all the time.
Wait, what are they?
It's like these carnival game looking things. And they're in random places, like in the bathroom, at the mall, or the movie theater. Like,
I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
they're like white. Usually they've got lights, like a yellow background. And they're like, weigh yourself. And I'm like, why? And like, I'm supposed to be excited about it.
And having a good day. And here's a scale. Let's pay money to shame you.
Yeah, exactly.
My number one memory of these scales is they had the weight chart of like the ideal weight.
Yes.
So whenever I went to the public bathroom at the mall, I would look at the chart.
Yes.
Because I'm a white lady, I know how much I weigh at any given moment. So I could at least like eyeball where I was if I was in the healthy range or not. I would always look at it and be like, you're hanging in there.
So you know what they are.
Yes. I've never heard them call the penny scale before.
That's because when we were around, they weren't a penny. They were a dime, a quarter. I don't remember. But when they first came out, they were a penny. And in 1885, Americans flipped over these things. They were imported from Germany. American manufacturers, they started making them on their own about 5 years later after the Germans sent them over.
After they're like, that's a lot of pennies coming in. I got to get in on that action. That is
Yes.
capitalism in work. And you know what? It does not surprise me that it comes from Germany because the Germans, as I've learned, are very much into like order and rules. And if you can quantify it and get guidelines around it, they're all about it. It makes them very excited.
And these things, they were popping up all over America, anywhere you'd find a vending machine. So a theater, the drugstore, wherever. And apparently this was big business. People made fortunes with these little things. They were talking like millions of dollars.
1 penny at a time.
And can you imagine being the Harris to a penny scale fortune? About how you'd be new moneyed everywhere you went.
Oh my gosh. I'm seeing the penny scale Paris Hilton. Can you imagine the first people to get on this thing? And they're like, this is a whole new quantifiable part of their person. Gravity was an abstract concept to them before. They didn't even know what weight was. They're just like, yeah, I stay on the earth. And then there was probably a group of them, and this is the kind of kid that I was. It's probably teaching you too much about myself in middle school. There's probably a group of girls that got together like, we're going to go in the penny scale. And they put in their pennies, and then everybody else was like at this number, and then the other one gets on, and it's like, oh, so much bigger. And you're like, I had no idea that I was worth so much less than my friends. It's a little too personal.
But the import of the penny scale was just the beginning. These German fuckers, they weren't done with us. Oh no, they imported the first bathroom scale then in 1913. And Americans, they got on that gravy train and they began making their own in just a few years. And people ate them up like it was their first diet cheat day of the new year. They could not get enough of that shit.
Well, did you know that they actually maintain penny per weigh-in business model? So like every time you get on your bathroom scale, you're supposed to be mailing a penny to Germany to this day.
To the Paris Hilton penny Harris.
Penny scale Paris. And you gotta write it right on an envelope and you just drop it in the mail. So you've got a penny. You're actually
a lot of penny.
a penny poorer because of this episode.
Because I weighed myself.
Yeah. So you owe that to any German at this point.
Just to Germany. Stick on the
Yes. To Bavaria.
And this was a new concept. And I read this article that was talking about how people started to care about their weight before their doctors ever did. They didn't do this as a part of standard medical evaluation. It was something that the people picked up. And so this question that we're left with is, why did people suddenly care about their weight when their doctors didn't? And the answer is that there was a ton going on in the world at that time that had us really focusing on health. And there was several different theories about why that might be. And I'm going to break down a few of these. And the first is that the world was really industrializing in this time. This is late 1800s, early 1900s. People are living longer and they're dying from different things. So what we think of now as super basic hygiene, this saved a lot of lives. So washing hands, more sterile surgery, pasteurization, vaccines, these things had us dying less of infectious disease and more dying of heart disease. So there's more looking at how healthy we are versus what calamity can befall us.
We're starting to do a more long-term investment. We're not day trading anymore. We're like, we're got to make this thing last me as long as possible. So let's start looking at some of those causes and effects of what could sink or swim this meat vessel that I am currently entrapped in.
And then there's the eugenics craze that I think kind of falls in line with this health and wellness and the fitness of the human body. It was on a lot of people's mind. It started with Darwin and the theory of evolution and about what was right, what wasn't. And it gave us a lot of these weirdos like Kellogg and the focus on wellness and wellness retreats and daily enemas.
I can't get out of bed without my daily enema, to be fair.
Really perks you right up.
I always do it before I get on the scale and have to send my penny to Germany.
If you've ever gotten a colon cleanse, it will knock that scale down.
Yeah, I know. I have tried the Kylie Jenner tea. That's how you get those flat tummy pics in the morning. You got to wake up first thing and you got to shit your brains out and then you become insta-famous.
I didn't do it for a Kylie Jenner tea, but I did have a terrible stomach flu one time. And then I looked in the mirror the morning after and I was like, oh, damn. Like flat belly.
Not only as everybody you see in movies spend 6 months getting into that shape, but they've also dehydrated themselves for 48 hours before they take their clothes off on camera.
And colon cleansed. I mean, I feel like, a little pooch goes away.
It is all 100% fake. But it's interesting because I think that the idea of eugenics creeping into weight is where we start to get into its deeper meaning, because it wasn't just a measure of health, it was an indicator of genetic success. Because eugenics was all about good genes, like good genes should prosper and bad genes should be eradicated. So if you were like, oh, I am in a lower weight, that's my good genes, like that lower weight or that good number, that healthy number became a sign of your inherent goodness or your inherent genetic strength, as opposed to if somebody was not within the ideal at the time, that would be considered genetic weakness. So that's interesting that this mindset is also coming in at the same time. And it was probably the first step in weight really taking on all of that extra meaning.
All that weight, taking on some extra weight.
The gravitational force that you exert on the earth does carry a lot of social weight.
And I think the rise of consumerism had effects on these trends as well. So as we're industrializing, you have people have factory jobs. You then have people who have more disposable income to spend on other things. And so these ads featured beautiful people that embodied that ideal body. And we wanted to know how we were doing. What is our progress report against these beautiful individuals toting health and wellness and the thin waist and the triangle shape of a man? How are we doing against these ideal images that everyone is using to sell us shit that we don't really need?
Well, yeah, and that's where it's the perfect vicious cycle, because if we're told a certain range of numbers is the ideal for health, and it's maybe an ideal that it's harder to hit, then we can sell you something to help you get there. So we're making money off of it. And then it's in our best interest to make that target you're aiming for even less attainable and more hard to reach so that I can continue to sell you shit. If it was just on, do you look good in your clothes? Do you feel good? That's very subjective. Like, yeah, I feel good. I think I look good. I feel good. I look good. Other people think I look good. But if you get that number involved, you get that quantifiable piece
that you can really exploit.
Yes, you can dispute, like, oh, you might feel good and you might think you look good and other people might think you look good. But, well, actually, that number is not the right number. So buy my thing to help you get to the right number.
And another thing that contributes to this, and even though it wasn't new at all, this correlation between goodness and weight. This is absolutely a factor here. This is something you can't get away from, is that fat is bad, and it really always has been. All the way back to our good friends, the 7 deadly sins. I feel like we talk about these a lot on the podcast. And I saw a definition of the deadly sin of gluttony, and it read, gluttony is a sin associated with an unhealthy indulgence in material delights, usually food. And this just sends them, indulgence is bad. Self-discipline is good. Feasting is bad. Fasting is good. These are the correlations that we've drawn between thinness and goodness and weight and badness. That predates any of these bathroom scales, any of these penny scales. It has been there, woven throughout history, and absolutely translates to how we feel about that number on the scale. And even though your weight was unknown before this scale craze in the 1890s, people knew very well what fat was, and they knew that they didn't like it. And then this magic little modern marvel, it appears, and whoa, you can weigh yourself. You can quantify your goodness with numbers. And now, in the privacy of your own bathroom.
Yes, it's like assigning your soul a value. You can't really quantify other parts of your goodness or your morality, but this one you can.
It very clearly in black and white on your scale numbers, as we just saw on the scale next to me, which I have a strong desire right now to kick outside of my peripheral view. Bum, bum, ba-da.
Yeah, these little pieces of plastic, and I don't know what makes the scale work. It's magic. Black magic.
As far as you're concerned.
But yeah, it's just there, and it has a lot of power over us. That's for sure.
And do you remember the first time that you weighed yourself, Rachel, or the first time you were concerned by that number on the scale?
I remember the first time it became meaningful. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the first time I was weighed. I think the first thing they do after they get you out of the birth canal is slap you on a scale.
They do.
From the very beginning, they're
It's true.
reducing me to a number.
Whatever. It's important when you're a baby. My baby was small, and they were like, feed this baby. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, but you would have fed her regardless. I mean, you weren't going to be like
fed her extra.
You weren't going to be like, baby,
extra.
you need to watch your caloric intake.
She needed to be fed extra.
I was a big ass baby. I was 8.5 pounds. Yeah.
Good for you.
My sister was 9. We're German.
That's a blessing.
That's why we invented scales, so we could just see how big our babies were.
To feel superior. So tell me about that first time.
It was in 5th grade, and I was a girl. I still am to this day. I remember it was like weigh day in gym. They pull out the fucking weird big ass scale with like the slidey things, and they make you line up and they weigh you.
In front of everyone?
Yeah, in front of it. They don't like blast it. This isn't the Hunger Games. They're not like
announcing it on a thing.
Yeah, they just tell you, and then you go back to your day-to-day life, I guess, as a child. That's just the beginning of how weird things got in gym class. You know, they made you take off your shirt and bend over, look at your spine.
Yeah.
Why? What credentials?
Apparently nothing, because I have scoliosis. Nobody told me until I was in my late 20s.
Yeah, you think a fucking elementary school gym teacher is going to diagnose scoliosis?
Bullshit. Bunch of pervos.
What they can do is diagnose me being fat, apparently. I got my weight, and I was, I was in 5th grade. Probably was like 102 at that time.
I have no frame of reference for what that means, though.
I was a little bit pudgy as a kid. This is where the frame of reference comes in. So they're like, you're 102, and I'm a kid. I'm like, what, 11?
So
I'm like,
what does that mean?
Yeah, I'm like, cool, I'm 102, blah, 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 blah. Go back to class later that same day. All the other girls are like standing around talking about their weight, and they're like, I'm 82, or I'm like, I'm 80. And then I was like, oh shit, the number I got is way bigger than the number of the other girls my age. And that's when it started to hit me. You might be fat. That's the first time that the scale and weight meant something, and I took note of it.
I don't remember the numbers specifically on the scale, but I do remember a very traumatic visit to my pediatrician. And I don't know how old I was. Probably somewhere between 3rd and 5th grade.
That's when you start to become more self-aware and like your relation to others.
And I remember this. It wasn't my normal pediatrician. It was like another doctor that was in the practice. My dad took me to the doctor this day, which is different because usually it's my mom.
Yeah.
And they were saying, you are overweight and you need to exercise. And the doctor had me in the office do push-ups.
I'm sorry, that's horrible. It's like, oh yeah, come here. I've solved childhood obesity. Do a push-up.
And I couldn't do them.
Oh.
And I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was a fat kid. I mean, I'm not going to deny the obvious truth here. What I didn't need was a pediatrician literally humiliating me in front of my father. I don't remember like the specifics of everything of that scenario. I mean, it was a really long time ago. But I do remember the look from my dad, which was like, he was so uncomfortable because he loved me and he knew what was happening was not making me feel good. But then there's like a doctor who's like an authority figure. And at the same time, he knew that I was a fat kid who needed to lose weight. So I feel like even at my young age, I could look at him and I could see internal struggle that was happening to him at that moment. That's the most that I remember about it. It was not so much my feeling, which was definitely humiliation and self-hatred. But I remember more than anything is that look on my dad's face of just like, this is the worst thing and I don't know what to do right now.
Yeah. I mean, can I guess something about that doctor? Was it an older white man?
Honestly, I remember almost nothing about that doctor. I don't remember if he was a he or a she or how old they were. I just remember the look on my dad's face.
Man, you can believe that a child needs to lose weight, but yeah, you should not
humiliate them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not how you go about doing it. It's more like a conversation, especially you said 3rd to 5th grade. You're not in control of your life at that time. Your parents are, so they should just be like, you know what? Maybe go on a walk as a family. Maybe.
Oh my God. And then I have a follow-up story. So shortly after this scenario, my parents were like, okay, you need to be more active. And my dad was like, okay, we're going to go on a jog. Let's go on a jog. And I'm like, okay. And so like, I get ready and we go on a jog. And I literally got around the corner. I'm talking like a half a block. And I tripped on an uneven sidewalk and just like busted my knee open and blood everywhere. And I started crying and it was like the most traumatic thing. And my parents were like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, we tried.
I wasn't an athletic kid.
My parents got me a dog and that's when I lost 10 pounds.
Oh, it's almost like it was done like in a healthy way where nobody really talked to you about it. And then it just happened. Oh, that sounds nice.
It was definitely a mixture. It was intentional. I think I stopped eating bread for a while too. At 11 years old, I was like,
oh, that's sad. 11 years old giving up bread. No one should give up bread ever, but especially at 11.
Yeah, 12-year-old at or 11, 12 is like around 5th or 6th grade. Got the dog, started running around, was like, didn't eat bread that summer. And I lost 10 whopping pounds. And I was like feeling so good about myself. And I was still called fat friend. Childhood is rough.
I mean, I can relate to that. I've been called fat for pretty much as long as I can possibly remember. But what I was thinking about when I was doing this research is, what does that word actually mean? What does the F word mean? Because it's thrown around a lot. And there are a ton of ways for you to determine if you're considered fat. And they all involve that number on the scale. There are several different formulas for deciding this quote unquote ideal body weight, and BMI, body mass index. This is the popular one right now, but unbeknownst to me, there are a lot more of those out there, different formulas for determining an ideal weight. And my favorite is the Divine formula for ideal weight. Because when I first read it, I saw Divine as divine.
It's like, I am divine.
Yes.
Let me know what my divine weight is.
Yes. Like there was some godly aspect ratio that we're all supposed to follow. But no, it was just some guy named Divine. And
he had it all figured out. Let me guess. 2 things about him. He was a white and he was a man.
The Divine formula. It is 100 pounds plus 2 pounds times your height minus 152 centimeters. And since I'm lazy and I didn't want to do the please excuse my dear and Sally, your parentheses and your multiplication.
Your orders of operation.
Exactly. I went to an online calculator to figure out, according to the divine formula, what I should weigh. And according to that, I should weigh 125 pounds.
And I got an even easier method for doing this math is the fact that I am like the same height as you. So then I just let you do all the math and crunch the numbers. And I'm like, that's my numbers,
There you go. I'm the guinea pig on this episode. Like I said, I
mean, you did the research, so you chose all of this.
No. You're absolutely right. I know what I am. And I know I'm not 125 pounds. I will not fool anybody into thinking I am. But there's actually several different formulas. So whether it's the BMI, Broca, Lemons, this other one that I couldn't even pronounce, like Hawaii, I don't know. I should be anywhere from 110 to 130 pounds. And we know from our vulnerability corner at the top, I am not. I am not within that range.
110 seems like a real stretch for a 5'5", 5'6" person.
I mean, I'll give them some leeway there. I mean, 110 to 130. My ideal weight, realistically, 130. But honestly, my goal is 150. Anyway, but there are problems with these calculations because they're really basic. They don't account for the muscle mass of the individual. And I've seen this in action where somebody that I worked with, we were both taking the company health assessment. And I'm like, wah, wah, looking at the thing. And the girl that I was talking to, she's like, don't worry. It tells me that I'm overweight too. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, you are a beast. She does CrossFit. She's made of pure muscle. And it's telling her that she's overweight. And so it doesn't really factor the same way. You can be absolutely ripped at a 180 or 160, and it would tell me that you were fat, and that wouldn't be true. Because if I were some female bodybuilder at 180, I wouldn't be fat at all. I would be a freak, but a different kind of freak.
Yeah, self-selected. You would have chosen that. The other thing that these scales don't take into account is boobs, and a woman's boobs should never count against her. So you're always deducting the weight of the boobs from the weight,
which I feel like realistically, I mean, 5 pounds, I'm sitting here hefting them. I feel like 5 pounds is reasonable.
So just knock that off. That's what I tell myself anyway, because I feel like mine aren't proportional to the rest of me. I would appear to be so much thinner without them because I do wear my oversized clothes. But if they were smaller, I would look more dainty.
Well, I think that just goes to the point because that number on the scale, it doesn't mean as much as this weight taboo would have us think. But we're still obsessed with it because what it really comes down to is how you look. People carry weight differently, whether it's in your bra or in your ass or in your face versus in your belly. All of this is going to make people look at you very differently. And it's really how closely you fit the body ideal. This is how you are judged as fat or not fat. And that ideal is changing constantly depending on what era you're living in. If you're looking at the 80s, which is the flat, muscular belly, versus the 60s, which is thin, twiggy looking thing. Versus,
emaciated body.
Yeah, heroin chic that came back in the 90s. That's what I want to be, heroin chic.
I want to look like I'm on a drug that wrecks
starves
my
me.
body. Yeah, that sounds great.
Versus,
Sign me up.
you know, the Renaissance where you see all these women in the paintings with their little chubby bellies. And I'm like, oh, I like you.
Well, going back to that early artifact, the Venus of Willendorf, which is considered the earliest Stone Age depiction of female beauty. And she is a curvy lady.
Oh, now I want to look it up.
mean,
What's her name? Venus what?
Venus of Willendorf. And it's beyond just curvy. This is
yeah. This is like a fertility statue. This is like
yes, and
MC Floppy Loons. She's got the boobies. She's got the belly. She's got full on apron belly.
well, yeah, because it's not even just pregnancy.
No.
It's like she is thick and her face is covered, which shows that her face is not important. It's not about what she looks like in the face. It's about her body and being reproductively viable.
So that just goes to show, look it up, listener. Venus of Willendorf versus heroin chic. Very different standards of beauty. And so that's really what we're looking at ourselves against. And these beauty standards, they change so much throughout history, but we're still obsessed with that number on the scale, even though it doesn't really correlate. No one in our modern society wants to be fat. But I think the real answer to what it means to be fat is a little bit like pornography. That definition, we know it when we see it. We jiggle it.
Oh, yeah.
Just a little bit. We
know
jiggle
it when we wiggle.
Oh, yeah. We wiggle it.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. And society really determines what that is. But what does it mean for the individual? What are the implications of being fat? And we are going to dig into this, the nasty heart of this taboo, when we come back from this short break.
So load up on your snacks. We'll be right back. Like the sands through the hourglass, this is the fat and the friendless.
Because no one wants to be fat. It's that worst schoolyard taunt that you can be on the receiving end of, right?
Honestly, the word that I've lived in fear of my whole life, right? You never, ever want to be described as it.
But really, what is so bad about fat? Why are we all so scared of it? Why don't we want to be it no matter what?
Yeah, when it's just any other descriptor, tall, short, brunette, why is this the thing?
That just has us all shaking in our boots.
Let's learn more.
There are obvious implications of being fat that I'm not really going to talk about because I feel like we all know them. Too much excess weight, it's unhealthy. And even though I am all for body positivity, I want people to love themselves no matter what their external wrapper is. I'm not going to deny the fact that overweight people, they are more at risk for heart disease, diabetes, cancer, musculoskeletal problems. Those are the facts, and I'm going to stick to them. Like I said, I want people to love themselves, but I'm not going to pretend that those things don't exist.
Well, I've heard on TikTok, Dr. TikTok has told me that it's not maybe as important as people think it is, that you can have a healthy body that is carrying extra weight. But then again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to argue with the facts you laid down. What I will say is, yes, as we establish this weight and this number thing and the stigma around it is definitely tied more to attraction and what's fashionable. And I will agree with you. And I will say your value, listener, is not derived from other people's attractiveness to you, regardless of you're a man or more likely if you're a woman, just in this case. So your value as a human being is inherent and not derived from those kind of measures. Anyways, okay, back to the thing.
No. I'll take this detour with you because I believe that when you're talking about 10 to 20 excess poundage, no, I don't think that there's a huge increase in heart disease, diabetes, cancer, musculoskeletal. But obese individuals, which I'm not going to lie, I'm technically in the obese category. I've accepted this about myself. And I do believe that that does come with other medical problems. So I think, again, it's all about ranges. So having a little bit of excess weight versus 50 pounds of excess weight is going to affect your health in very different ways. But not to say that anybody should hate themselves, like you said, based on how attractive they are or aren't to other individuals.
And maybe there's outliers, right? There's probably people who are in the healthy BMI range who have horrible health.
Absolutely.
Right? And there's people who fall in the higher ranges of the BMI who have good health.
Absolutely.
There's somebody I follow on the social media who looks obese, probably, I guess that is obese, but runs marathons and like trail races and all this stuff. So her health is probably still good. So I guess it just exists where it's an indicator for most people, because most of us, if we're running marathons, we're not going to be at that weight. But it's not a guarantee.
Because every person is totally different. We're not all the same individuals, and life is variable and complicated.
If we've learned anything from this podcast, it's that it's fucking complicated.
Absolutely. But it's really that health aspect of being fat, that is not the root cause of our fat fear. That is not why people call you fat on the schoolyard. Because if it were, we'd also be throwing insults at smokers, alcoholics, anorexics who starve themselves too skinny, hard drug users. But no, we're thinking of all kinds of reasons to feel sorry for the alcoholics, the drug users, and maybe throwing a little bit of insult at the smokers. But we're certainly not at the anorexics, you know?
I did not live in fear of being like, oh, you're a smoker, you know?
You're unhealthy.
Yeah, like you should probably do something about your cholesterol.
Because bullies aren't insulting you because they care, no matter what Joe Rogan says on his podcast. He doesn't care about your health.
Is he still doing a podcast? I don't even know.
Oh, he's like the number one podcast in forever.
I know. That was a joke. That was a joke.
We're going to be the next Joe Rogan.
No, we're not.
No, we're not.
I don't want to be a next Joe Rogan. Do you know who is my podcasting icon?
I don't know.
Stuff you should know. I want to do an informative, slightly boring podcast. No, just kidding.
But it's not entirely about these beauty standards either, because being beautiful is a lot more than being thin. It's also having that super thick, wavy hair, an unwrinkled skin, no zits, these tiggle bitties. And each of these conditions of having or not having, they have their own insults to throw around. I mean, we've all heard the schoolyard taunts for all of those.
Well, and yeah, the line of thinking there is, yeah, meth might make you thin, but it's not going to make you attractive.
No, it is not. Because none of those insults that you can think of, they're not as common or as gut punching as fat. It's really in its own weight class when it comes to insult.
Oh my God, the puns keep coming.
I know, never ending. Because it's more than just extra pounds, health risks, and living outside these beauty standards. Being called fat is the ultimate insult, and it's because it assumes something about who you are and what you are.
And this is something that I've experienced, and no matter what weight I actually am, I can never shake the feeling that I am a fat kid.
And the first of those is status. We no longer live in the time where the rich are nice and plump. They have that little goopy belly. And the poor are skinny, fading away people. It's
toiling in the field.
Exactly. Being rich means that you're thin now. You have the time, the energy, the money to devote to food planning, to shopping, cooking, exercising, buying that Lululemon bullshit. Your thinness, something about your thinness makes you a more valued member of society. And to be fat, especially as a woman, means that you are of a lower status. Usually it means that you're poor. You don't have the time to commit to this lifestyle.
Yeah, you're like eking out a living. That sounds bad. But these other people, they're affording all of these other luxuries, the healthiest food.
The organic whole foods.
Yeah, and the help in guiding them in exercising and eating. And like we talked about, think about when you were in crisis, when you were struggling to make it through the day. Were you making the healthiest food choices, or were you making
fuck No.
Yeah, you were eating what felt good and what got you through it, what, was a comfort, and let alone what you could afford. That also factors into it. It's so messed up that the low-calorie food is the most expensive.
I mean, I've often said that people are like, oh my gosh, she looks so good. And I'm like, yeah, she's fucking rich and famous. If I had the money to pay someone to make me healthy meals and literally slap cookies out of my hands, I bet I'd be 110 pounds. Color me not impressed. Live a real life and then show me how amazing you are.
Yeah, if she can do that while working 45 hours a week.
Yeah, with a kid in the hospital. All kinds of mental fucking trauma. Anyway. So that's just one.
Oh, gosh.
The status that comes along with weight. And another one is character. So carrying these extra lbs, they also come with the assumption about who you are, about your character, that you're lazy, you lack self-discipline, you're greedy or self-indulgence. And this one breaks my heart because it's not that it's untrue, because it is, because we are all lazy. We all lack self-discipline. We're all greedy. We're all self-indulgence. It's just that this particular vice, food, and indulgence, just that fat is such a visible way of showcasing those flaws. And it really sucks because if you are a shopaholic or an alcoholic or I don't know, whatever kind of other holic.
Slept in till 11 a.m., that kind of sloth.
Or you sleep around to deal with your internal trauma or whatever unhealthy vices we all have to deal with these things. It just happens to be that food and weight is just something that is broadcast. So your character flaws are out there for everyone to see and point and laugh at in the most visible way possible. And the last one, it refers to how much people like you. Research has shown that overweight people, they are discriminated against in pretty much every way that you can be discriminated against. Hiring, salary, healthcare, even getting a drink at a crowded bar. But it even goes beyond that. Kids as young as 4 years old discriminate against the overweight. And this one really broke my heart. A study in the UK in 2013, they showed children between the ages of 4 and 6 years old. They showed them 3 different versions of a custom-made children's book. And each book told the exact same story. But in 3 versions, the main character, Alfie, he was either overweight, disabled, or normal in appearance. And when children were asked what they thought about Alfie, these children had very different thoughts on him based on which version of the book that they read. Fat Alfie was less likely to win a race, do well at school, be happy with his looks, and get invited to parties. The Alfie that was in a wheelchair, he was also marked down, but not nearly to the same extent as overweight Alfie. Only one of the 43 children that read the Fat Alfie version of the book said they would want to be his friend.
Oh, well, that's pretty sad. This is just the tip of the fucked up iceberg of our culture. It's just like, how does anybody come out of, how does anybody live is really the question. So that's the reason that weight management, the rational reason I should say, that weight management is so important to me is that I'm always trying to get myself the easiest life as possible. And I know that my life will be easier if I'm in that kind of more societal palatable weight range.
You are 100% right.
It's definitely more deeply rooted in the fact that I think that my attractiveness is where I derive value from. That I'm not going to lie, like they're not maybe on the conscious level of the day-to-day life, but that's, a main indicator. I didn't grow up in a vacuum, but this is the rational piece I tell myself is, it's messed up. And I guess that's the way society is. So if that's the cards that I'm dealt, I'm going to try to play my hand as best as possible.
So now that we've taken a look at the history of the scale, the different definitions of the ideal body and what it really means to be fat, and of course, socially, what it means to be fat, we are right back to where we started with our rude question. How much do you weigh? And the more important question, why does it matter? And looking back on all of this research, I think this is one of those perfect storms where everything comes together in just a multiple layered mess that makes it such an important thing in our society. And the first is this correlation between wellness and moral goodness. It goes all the way back to those biblical times that we talked about.
The fucking Bible.
But the Bible didn't pull it out of their ass. Like, it was something that came from those times as well, and they just put it down on paper.
Yeah, when food was scarce.
Exactly.
When it was shitty. When everything you ate was taking food from somebody else. These people had no idea. They couldn't even fathom the utopia we live in, where we can all get fucking fat and happy.
Translated into this modern time, it's like somehow having dry toast and unsweetened tea for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, somehow that makes you a good person? I don't understand this logic. The assignment of goodness to
restraint, fighting your natural urges.
Yes.
The farthest you can get from that lizard brain, the more immoral you are. Every natural inclination you have to gorge yourself, to fuck, to lay in bed all day because it's easier. All those natural instincts that made us survive, those are no good in modern life. Those are the things that make you bad because that lizard brain is bad. We're elevated. We're higher life forms.
Yeah, we want to pretend that we're better than everything else. And it just doesn't make any sense to me because we all have deep-seated flaws. It's just that if you have the misfortune of pulling this one card, you are less than.
We ain't nothing but mammals.
And this other fixation on the body ideal, especially for women. I mean, if women aren't fuckable, they are worthless in our society. I mean, I feel like this applies to men in some categories, but it's not the same as it is with a woman. Absolutely not. Because a fat, old, ugly man gets that hot bitch. And it is because men have other attributes that are more important than their physical attractiveness.
Yeah, you can hear men say like, yeah, I'm fat, I'm a fat guy, whatever, blah, 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 because it's not their number one value in our society. And this whole episode could be how much do you weigh and why does it matter, parentheses, for women. Because it always is going to mean more for women than it does for men because of our role in society has been determined by our attractiveness to men. And that is just the way it is. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
And another aspect of this is the fact that excess fat is unhealthy. If you're carrying around 50, in my case, or 100, 200, 300 extra pounds, there's no telling that you're going to be super healthy. Like, that does affect your body. But lastly, there is that social aspect of weight and what people think of you, that low status, that you're sloppy, unlovable, you're friendless. And I think that last one, that is really the crux of it about why it matters. Because humans are such social creatures, as we talked about time and time again on this podcast. To be judged, rejected, ostracized, that means literal death to our caveman brain. If you're pushed out of the hunting party, out of the tribe, you are going to die out there on your own. So it's no wonder that we fear that F word and then the number on the scale so much, because it is perceived as a real physical threat to our well-being.
We have to be within the ideal so that other humans like us and care about us and keep us in the safety of that social order.
Keep us within the warm flames of the caveman fire.
Yeah, and not get kicked out into the cold with the saber-toothed tigers.
And these are the things that come together to give us this hell of a taboo. It's really cemented in our brains and our society. And I feel like it's something that is just going to keep plugging along. That's what it's all about. That's why weight matters.
Not a good answer, but I mean, like, it's not going anywhere. That's for sure.
And it's not just America either. There are tons of countries out there where fat is a taboo. And it's not just Western cultures.
Like the whole
Eastern.
continent of Asia. One of the thinnest I was in my life, my Chinese roommate told me I was fat. I was like, okay, thanks. Thanks for that.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thanks for coming to our education system to tell me I'm fat. The best day of my life was when I put on her clothes on accident and I told her about it. I was like, hey.
She was like,
yeah, I think she died inside when she found out that I could fit in her clothes, that we were the same size. We started on opposite ends and we met in the middle.
Met in the middle. You got thinner. She got fatter.
Yeah. Welcome to America. Everything's full of sugar and there's a lot of it.
Yeah. Joke's on her because those Eastern cultures, they're all getting fatter too. We are all feeling the effects of westernization, and we can talk about our diet and
lifestyle. Yeah, our caveman brain is going to win out in the end. You can be in Europe, you can be in Asia, you can be in America. Fat and sugar, they do the same thing to our brains.
We're all going to end up just like the movie WALL-E says, morbidly obese in our little mechanized scooters running around.
I mean, it's only going to take one more COVID variant before the world is fully ends and we go straight to the metaverse and fucking Mark Zuckerberg is the new god creating the metaverse. Have you seen any of that? Virtual reality stuff?
I've seen a little bit of it. It's bullshit. I'm not interested.
It looks so cool. I'm like,
you think it looks cool?
Anyways, moral of the story is that the virtual reality is the future. It's pretty cool.
And so don't worry about your weight because nobody's going to see it because we're all going to represent virtually.
Yeah, we're all going to be fat WALL-E people and we're going to be fucking hot avatars having hot avatar sex with each other.
So eat all the Oreos, McDonald's, Christmas cookies, leftover gifts, ham that you want.
Ooh, I'm gonna have some Christmas candy as soon as we get off this phone call. Christmas candy.
I've got so much candy.
Yeah,
it's gonna be
well, you already weighed yourself, so you're good.
I don't give a fuck. A diet like every New Year's resolution loser. Diet starts January 2nd because I'm on vacation this week, and like I said, I've had a hell of a week.
Yeah. Wait, what makes you more of a loser? Having a New Year's resolution or having a podcast?
Probably podcast. No.
And then having to tell everybody, you're like, hey, check out my podcast.
I don't mind. I plug it all the time.
And if you did land here from Laura plugging the podcast and you liked it, be sure to leave us a 5-star review in Apple or Spotify now. And if you leave us a written review, we will give you a shout out on our show.
And if you have rude questions, you can send it to root@impolitesocietypodcast.com. We got some great questions over the last couple weeks that we've not mentioned that we want to shout out here today. We've got a question from Ben S. on pets. That is an awesome question that we are going to get to sometime within the next couple of months. And then also a really naughty story from Dion Jones on the Fleshlight. We'll be talking more about that later in the next couple weeks as well. So give us a shout out, email, Facebook, Instagram,
TikTok. Once we're not soft banned anymore.
We're more than soft band. We're hard band. Oh, it's hard band.
We like to be banned hard, you know.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining us. Happy 2022. Happy dieting, I guess. I don't know. It's a thing people do.
Welcome to the new year, fatties. Come join us.
And we will talk at you later, guys. Have a good night.
I weigh 135 to 140 pounds.